and this was considered normal. So from my earliest memories, we just see adults having sex all over the place with every partner they wanted, and this was also part of the grooming of making it normal for us to see sexual interactions between everybody.
It was the law of love.
Yeah, they called it the law of love, which was David Berg's rationalization for perversions and pedophilia, where he reasoned that everything that is done in love is not wrong. Therefore, the members should be allowed to, you know, share their bodies as the ultimate expression of love, not only with each other, but also with outside people, so that they could gain converts, gain money, and government protection in some cases. And then it spilled over into the children after some time, because David Berg himself was already a pedophilia. He had had sexual interactions with both of his daughters before he ever even began the Children of God. And so of course he wanted to rationalize this idea to all the members so that they would begin to practice it as well, and it wouldn't be considered unusual or perverse. And this wasn't something that he just suddenly came out with and told everyone to do. It was something that he slowly conditioned them over, you know, a couple years, first with themselves and sharing their own bodies between each other, and then later on, you know, giving stories of the way he was grooming his own son and daughter in sexuality, and reasoning that because children could have orgasms and, you know, they could enjoy sexual pleasure, the typical pedophilia idea, you know, therefore they should be allowed to participate. And what's incredible to me is that everybody went with it, and, you know, it wasn't, nobody even asked why. I mean, if they did, they left, but, you know, most people participated in this, or if they didn't participate, they turned a blind eye to the ones who were participating in it. So,
what was date time and nap time for children?
Nap time we had every day, in the middle of the day, 2 hours of a nap, sleep. But before we had nap or bedtime at night, we would have date time, which was the time allotted for when we would all be paired off.
And this is what
to
age?
Have sex. Well, my earliest memories were 3 years old of this. I remember very clearly. And my own mother overseeing a date nap one time. I remember I was very embarrassed because she was watching me, and I didn't want to participate because I felt embarrassed. She was peeking through. We had made a tent around our bunk beds, and they had paired us all off. And I heard some giggling. I saw Mum and another adult peeking through, watching us, and I remember feeling ashamed and a bit dirty. I remember that feeling. I didn't want to participate in that.
What was flirty fishing?
Flirty fishing was when the female members of the group were sent out to, basically it was another form of prostitution, but give their bodies sexually to the men as a way of witnessing or sharing God's love with men. And also some male members shared themselves with women outside. And like I said, it was to gain membership or money, or in some countries they were flirty fishing top government officials for protection in the country, and they were trying to infiltrate. I remember when I was living in the Philippines, they were trying to infiltrate the Philippine government, and they were flirty fishing all the top generals in the military, and the army was marching to family music during their drills, and they got very close before the coup in Koryokino took over.
Juliana, you've lived almost all over the world in different communes and with different groups of people, and you spent time here in Ireland, and I know a lot of our viewers will be very shocked to hear that the Children of God was in operation here in Castleconwell in County Limerick.
Yes, well, it wasn't just there. I mean, we travelled all over Ireland, and they might be even more shocked to learn that they might have bought a balloon from us or got their child's face painted by us, because it was one of the ways we raised money for the group.
So what age were you when, at that stage in the 90s?
I was 17 years old, and I had moved here because my father sent me away from Japan, where he was living, due to visa problems. And he wanted to send me to India, and I really didn't want to go to India, so I wrote to one of the communes in Ireland and asked to join them, and so I was invited over. And they sent us all around the shopping centres around Ireland. I mean, I've been to almost every county in Ireland, the shopping centres. We would face paint, make balloons, And we raised a lot of money for a lot of of course, much of the money went to the cult leaders. We never saw it.
Were you recruiting in the shopping centres at all, or was it just...
Sometimes we would pass out like leaflets and stuff like that, but mostly we were just there to make money for the leaders. I think they realised that it was difficult to recruit in Ireland without drawing some kind of attention. And also, it was us young people. We weren't... At that stage, I certainly didn't want to go out witnessing and recruiting people. I really hated it by that point. I mean, from the time I was this little, we were sent out as children to make money and to try and witness to people, try and steadily recruit them, sing for people. And they always used the children as their front because, you know, who can turn down a sweet little, you know, rosy cheek face? And,
sure.
And so the children were all very much used for everything.
The Children of God became the Family of Love, became the Family, is now the Family International,
yes.
Which are in Limerick at the moment, but have completely disassociated themselves with anything that the Children of God engaged in. And I just want to be very clear about that. There is absolutely no instance of institutional abuse in the Family International organisation that's based in Limerick. They themselves say they're non-profit and they just carry out missionary work. Bar the sexual abuse, there was no formal schooling, Juliana. There was the silence restriction. What was silence restriction?
Okay, well, obviously a lot of us children had our own thinking minds, and, you know, we started to question things we saw, or sometimes it was for something very simple, like wanting to read a dictionary or wanting to read outside material, or singing a system song, which was, system was their word for the outside world. And so they started to put all of us children into these training camps to try and turn us into little zombies. Or David Berg reasoned that the children that were born into the group had no outside influence of the outside world, therefore they were the perfect candidates to be little cult clones, that they could be conditioned from the time they were babies to be exactly what he wanted, his picture of what a perfect you know, a perfect little follower should be. Yeah. And so obviously the children who did, you know, think for themselves or didn't agree with everything, they were the first to be pulled into these camps, and sometimes they were quite harsh. The camps were sort of military style, where they had a lot of harsh disciplinary methods that they used, such as silence restriction, where children weren't allowed to speak for sometimes months at a time.
Physically gagged?
The big tape across their mouths and a big sign around their neck that said, "Don't speak to me, I'm on silence restriction," and anybody who spoke to them then received the same punishment. So of course you didn't speak to them, as you were afraid. And they would like make them dig ditches until they fainted and then fill them up again, sometimes deprive them of food, sleep, and constant indoctrination, constantly hearing the cult doctrines over and over and over. You have to memorize the passages of the cult doctrine. You have to, you know, have hours a day spent listening or reading the material that the cult produced. So it was obviously they were trying to brainwash.
Break you down. How did you eventually get out?
Well, I remember from the time I was a young teenager desperately wanting to leave, and always being told that the outside world at its best was still much worse than the family was at its worst. And I remember thinking, well, if this is the best that it gets, I don't want to be alive at all. And I remember trying to kill myself a couple of times because of that. And one time I told my dad I wanted to leave when I was 13, and he panicked and he shipped me off to another training camp in India to try and recondition me again, which didn't really work. And so that whole time was quite difficult for me, trying to land on my feet, trying to just get a sense of things, and also discover my own mind, what I really thought about things, what my own beliefs were, what I wanted to do in life. And the first year was definitely the most trying. I think for all kids who leave, it's the clincher year, is whether when they leave, they find a good person or a bad person finds them. You know, the predators out there sense easy prey. And I know many kids who were caught up by predators and fell into drugs or fell into prostitution and didn't make it, and a lot of them committed suicide or went into drugs.
You're remarkably composed for someone who's